Welcome to Relationship Reset with life coach Dr. Mark Shook. In each podcast, Mark will weave together the ancient truths of Scripture with the latest cutting-edge neuroscience in short, concise, effective, and doable principles and actions to reset your relationship dynamic.
Ready? Hello and welcome to Relationship Reset. I'm Mark Shook. I am so glad to have my beautiful wife Laura with me today because I think it's so important, ladies, that we have a woman's voice in this, not just hearing from the guy, and when we're talking about marriage issues. We're in the last of 3 podcasts delving deep into the work of Dr. John Gottman as he has found a way to predict with 90+% accuracy whether a marriage, he can do it within 15 minutes and sometimes within 1 minute, whether a relationship is going to end in failure, divorce. It's an amazing thing that he's got, but he's identified 4 key behaviors that you see that he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. If you haven't seen the first 2 podcasts, be sure and go back and grab hold of those because we're going to talk today. Really, we'll give a really quick review, but we're going to talk about even more of the antidotes to what we can do, some action steps to what we can do with each one of those.
So these 4 horsemen are actually communication styles that we take on in our relationships. And let me just briefly explain what they are before you go on. The first one is criticism, which is attacking your partner's character, not just expressing a complaint about a specific issue, but actually attacking who your partner is fundamentally. The second one is defensiveness, which is a self-protective response when we feel like we're being attacked by our partner. We all kind of naturally fall into that. It can include shifting blame or making excuses, but defensiveness is that second one. The third one is contempt, and this is the worst one, the worst communication pattern in our relationships that honestly has the biggest predictive factor to our relationships failing. And it's viewing our partner with disrespect and disdain, and often involves sarcasm and cynicism and communicating those things with your partner, name calling, that kind of really disrespectful stuff is contempt. And then the fourth one is...
It's really psychological abuse.
That's what Dr. Gottman would say,
that
it is. And I believe that too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen a relationship or a couple that falls into that. It's really awful to see and to hear. It's ugly, and it really is abusive. The fourth one is stonewalling, and that's where one partner, for whatever reason, maybe they're overwhelmed in the communication and they just need to shut down for a while. They withdraw from communication. That kind of leads to an emotional detachment. They're not looking, they're not listening. And they really need some time apart to kind of reset emotionally.
So we discussed that in the last 2 podcasts, those 4 things in depth a little bit more. And if you haven't seen that, go back and grab it. The first step in transforming your relationship, if you see any of these 4 horsemen in it, is to recognize the pattern. Everyone exhibits some of the 4 horsemen in their relationship at times, those behaviors. But what's important is how frequently they occur and in what contexts. And so take some time to reflect on your interactions. Do you notice a recurring pattern where criticism or contempt or defensiveness or stonewalling surfaces? For example, you might find that criticism surfaces when discussing household chores, or maybe it's around finances, while stonewalling appears during heated arguments. Recognizing these patterns isn't about assigning blame, but it's about understanding your relationship dynamics. And awareness is a huge foundation for change.
I think a good exercise after the fact, when you have some time with your spouse to sit down and reflect and think about things and look at them, is to take some time to maybe look at your most recent interaction that was negative and look at it together and say, here I see where I began to criticize you, or here I see where I began to cast blame, or here I see where I started just shutting down and stonewalling, and take a look at what you're doing and explain those behaviors to one another. I think it helps for you both together to sit down and take a look at it.
We've talked in some of our Sunday messages about triggers, and basically it's identifying your triggers. You could go back and grab some of those things too. But if you can approach this with a spirit of curiosity and a shared goal of improving your relationship, not blaming, not trying to say, oh, this is what you always do. Again, that's back to criticism. It's interesting because the psalmist in the book of Psalms, David wrote, he said, try me, O God, and know my thoughts and see if there's any hurtful ways in me. If you're a believer, you can just pray that little prayer. You can just say, God, look inside of me. See if there's any of these hurtful ways. Show me. I always ask the Holy Spirit to just kind of nudge me when one of these things comes up. Oh, that's what that is. But I think the whole goal basically is to get your relationship to be kind of like Nancy Dreyfus in 1992. She wrote a book and it was called Talk to Me Like I'm Someone You Love. It's amazing to me how we don't do that so often in relationships. Would you just talk to me like someone that you care about, that you love, right?
I think so often with our spouse, we talk to them worse than we talk to anybody else. We're comfortable, and we forget how important it is to communicate with love and communicate with compassion and understanding and caring.
So we talk to the most important person in our life like we wouldn't talk to a complete
else.
stranger.
Right.
And some of us do that with ourselves too. We've got some pretty difficult self-talk going on, that we need to work on. So once you've identified the presence of the four horsemen in your relationship, the next step is to begin to implement the antidotes. And we talked a little bit about those in each episode, but I want to dig into them one more time because I really want everything that we do to be so practical, so actionable. I want to give you hope. This is how you make the changes. You start integrating these antidotes into your daily interactions. So, Laura, with criticism, how can we?
I think if you have identified that criticism is an issue and maybe there's a particular area that you find yourself being critical, you want to remember to do that gentle startup, to change your communication to, maybe it's you're coming home late from work and you're not communicating that. When you come home late, I feel worried, and changing your statements to that, talking about how I feel instead of talking about what you're doing necessarily, but I feel like this. And then your partner can understand where you're coming from and why you want them to call and not.
And maybe even give a specific thing that would help you.
Right.
If you've thought it out enough, you could say, could we find a way to keep each other updated?
Right.
And let's just, if you can just keep me updated, make a conscious effort to approach each of these kind of situations, and what is it that you need from that? What is it that's driving you to feel so upset and out of sorts? And so with each particular thing, get really specific. What is it that you need? And get away from the always and never. You never let me know where you are. You don't care about me, obviously. You don't care if I'm involved with you, whatever. That's criticism, getting really specific and saying, it causes me to get anxious. Or if you're late, especially, I get worried that you've had an accident on the road or something. Could you find a way just to keep me updated? I'm running a little late, but all's well, And then what about defensiveness?
Defensiveness, I think the biggest thing is to begin to take personal responsibility and to be able to communicate to your spouse, I understand why you may feel this way, or, I hear what you're saying. Even if you can't say you understand it, you can at least say, I hear what you're saying and I want to help make that better. Communicating to your spouse, I see my part in it and I want to work together with you to make it better.
I see, Laura, that I didn't listen as attentively as I could have, and I can understand why that upset you.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I agree.
Right.
It means that I see.
Right.
And there's this, one of the biggest things that stops defensiveness is just validation.
Mm-hmm.
In our early relationship, a lot of times Laura would just ask me, said, am I weird or crazy or, to feel this
yes.
way? And in our early relationship, I probably said, yeah, you're crazy. But what I learned to say, no, I can see why you feel that way. And that's normal that you would feel that way based on what's going on. I didn't mean it that way, but it totally makes sense. And without being so defensive, you can kind of get into this idea of like, no, what you feel makes sense to me.
And I think sometimes just simply that, having your feelings recognized and validated, calms a lot of things down.
Yeah.
When your partner sees how you feel and they say it's okay for you to feel that way.
Guys, even if it doesn't totally make sense to you, okay?
And it probably won't.
It might not, but well, what about with contempt? What do we do?
I think one of the biggest thing with contempt, if you are seeing this in your relationship and you see
it's
yourself
deadly,
doing
right?
that, or your spouse, one is to recognize that it is deadly,
It's at the end.
and it's probably way past time to go get help.
Yeah.
So make that phone call and start getting some counseling. But I think one of the biggest things is to begin to express gratitude. And maybe you can't see anything to be grateful for at this moment. Ask God to begin to show me one thing that I can be grateful for in my spouse and in our relationship, and start there and begin daily thanking God for maybe just that one thing. And as you do that, that list will grow, and your feeling and your attitude will begin to change.
And I think make a daily habit. Write down every day just for yourself without talking to your partner, the things that you're grateful for. And maybe like Laura and I do each evening, so we lay down to go to sleep, we share one thing that we appreciate about our partner or one thing that we're grateful for that day. And that small act can make a huge shift in the relationship dynamic. Well, what about stonewalling?
Stonewalling, I think, is pretty easy. It's hard when you face it in your relationship, but when you understand what it is, that your partner is most likely just overwhelmed with emotion, overwhelmed with the conversation, and know that one of you or both of you need some time out so that you can take some time and do those things that physically help your body calm down, whether it's deep breathing, taking a hot bath, going outside and being in the grass, or whatever those things for you that calm your body down, taking time to do that with the understanding and the acknowledgement, maybe even say it out loud, like, we're not finished with this conversation. This is important to me. We will come back and talk about it after the kids are in bed or whenever it is, set a time, but we're going to come back and finish this discussion. Let me take some time to calm my body down because
And remember,
it's triggered.
because in that moment you might not have the words, even if you get a signal ahead of time, and make sure that the other partner knows this means I'm out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm flooding with adrenaline, emotion, cortisol, all of these fight and flight hormones. We're not done. Just give me a few minutes and we can finish talking about this in a calmer way.
And I think you'll recognize that too, like you said, when you feel your body triggered, when your emotions suddenly just shoot off the scale higher than is appropriate for the conversation you're having. Your body's triggered, and you need to take some time and let that trigger calm down.
And like I talked about in one of my messages on Sunday, neuroscientists tell us this happens in 1/200th of a second. So a lot of times it's not even about the argument. It's about something that we feel deep inside about losing the sense of connection with each other. And we think it's about the argument at hand.
And I want to emphasize too that it's important with all of these things that you're talking about yourself. It's really easy and really destructive to say, hey, I can see you're triggered.
Yeah.
That doesn't help your partner at all. So you need to think about when you feel it in you and communicate about yourself. I feel this, or I need this, or don't talk about or for your partner, but express your needs and your desires.
And I guess, you can ask them, like, is something going on? Do you need some space? Maybe not say, you look triggered and, I can't figure out what's going on with you because you're really weird.
And I think, all of these things take practice.
Yeah.
Even just
practice makes progress. That's what Gottman says. Practice makes progress.
You're not looking for perfection.
It requires patience.
But you're looking for progress.
And just like anything in life, if you're going to get good at relationships, and you're going to have to practice. And that means you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But as you forgive each other and you move through that. Gottman, in his book, Beyond Addressing the Four Horsemen, he says it's important to strengthen the relationship and build up a reservoir of positive interactions. And he gives a few ways, and I thought we might just close out by sharing those today. He says we should create rituals of connection, maybe a small daily or weekly ritual that fosters connection with each other, having coffee together in the morning, a weekly date night or a nightly check-in before bed, like what Laura and I do. What's some other things that he says you can do?
He talks about building an emotional bank account and just every positive interaction you have with your spouse pours into that bank account, and you have those things then as a basis and a foundation for further communication and continuing to work with one another.
So you're either making a deposit in the bank account,
That's
the love
positive,
bank of the other person,
yes.
or you're making a
or
withdrawal.
you're withdrawing by something
some of us
negative.
have made so many withdrawals that we're, basically in a lot of trouble.
And the more deposits you make, the more resilient your relationship's going to be. That's why it's important. Like we talked about earlier, expressing the positive things toward one another. When you see your spouse doing something good that you appreciate or enjoy, don't just think about it. Say it out loud to one another. And that makes deposits.
That used to be what you saw all the time. When they say love is blind, when you first got together, you just saw all those positive things.
Right.
But you can practice that again. Gottman also says turn toward each other. We've been talking about this, that it's the emotional connection that people are looking for. Are you there for me? Do you care? And then he says practice open communication. Make time to have honest conversations about your relationship, even when nothing is going on. Don't wait for conflict always.
And I think, too, that idea of open communication, because I came from a family that didn't communicate a whole lot, and I didn't learn how to have those conversations very productively. One of the things that has helped me across the years, and I just want to put it out there in case it'll be helpful for you, too, but we bought these boxes of conversation cards.
Yeah, we did.
And they're just kind of like a little card that'll ask a question. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them all over the place.
You can find them on, you can Google it, and they'll have a list of questions.
So it's just kind of little conversation starters for couples, and it asks, and it gets you talking about, how you feel or what your dreams are or what your goals are or how you felt as a child. I mean, it just opens up that ability to be able to communicate with one another and share who you are, who you were, where you hope to be. If it's hard for you to come up with those things, it's a great tool, and it's been a great tool for us.
Well, the four horsemen don't have to spell doom for your relationship. By understanding these behaviors, implementing these antidotes that we've talked about, you can transform how you and your partner communicate, resolve conflicts, and connect on a deeper level. And this transformation is not going to happen overnight, but with patience and consistent effort, you can shift the dynamics of your relationship. Practice these skills, and don't be afraid to seek professional help. Our counseling team here at Community Faith is amazing. You can call them, whatever you need to do that. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into John Gottman's Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And we hope this discussion has provided you with some helpful tools. Don't have a lot of helpful tools in our marriage toolbox a lot of times. And if it's been helpful for you, share it with somebody else. And remember, you can always find John Gottman's book, and it's the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Really helpful. Thank you for joining us here on Relationship Reset. We'll see you next time.